This pattern is going to be the sparkle done. It's an emerger pattern. I've got a size 16 TroutFly hook and vise. Got the barb mesh down. We're going to start out here by just laying a nice little thread base for us to begin with. So we'll get that started. So the first material we're going to tie in is going to be a clump of deer hair, and we're going to use this for a wing that we're going to stand up. So as you can see, the tips are unaligned, which means I'm going to have to stack this, and anytime I stack it, I'm going to go ahead and pinch the ends, and you'll be able to probably see here the underfur that's in there, and we're going to clean that out just with a comb. So once I've got that underfur cleaned out, hopefully there'll still be a little bit of fuzziness there, but our tips still are not aligned. So I'm just going to grab my hair stacker here, and we'll just put that in tips first and let that slide on down. So we've got our thread base down, we've cleaned off the underfur. Here's our stacked deer hair. So hopefully you can see our tips are now in alignment like they need to be. I'm just going to pinch those tips to keep those aligned. Remove that from my stacker. For measurement, I'm going to want this wing to be just about the length of the shank of the hook. So right about there, I'm just going to pinch there, and that will help me make sure that I'm pinching in the right spot. I'm just going to hold this above the hook. I've wound my thread counterclockwise, so it'll kind of jump back a little bit more. I'm going to take one wrap there. I'm going to come back around again, and then I'm going to pull straight down on my thread. And I'm using nano silk here, which is really helpful because you can put a lot of tension on it. Plus it's not going to leave much of a footprint. So there we go, we've got that. I'm going to keep hold of this clump here, and then I'm just going to come in here with my scissors, and I'm going to want to cut that off as close as I can, the butt ends here. So we're looking at something kind of like that. With that in place like that, I'm just going to take a few careful thread wraps over the rest of the deer hair because I want it to lay down flat. I don't necessarily want it to go springing out, which is what will happen if I put a lot of tension just like this stuff did. I wanted it here, I don't want it springing out back here. So I'm just going to take those careful thread wraps back here. And then we should be sitting right about like that. I'm going to bring my thread back to where I'm going to want the abdomen on this fly to start. I've mashed down the barb, but we're going to want this to start right at the bend of the hook. So that's typically right about where the barb would be if there was a barb on the hook. So right about there is going to do me just fine. We're going to go ahead and move forward. The next material we're going to tie in is just going to be some white Z yarn. We're going to use that for a shuck, and we're also going to let that butt right up against where we've tied in that deer hair. I want to keep that on top of the shank of the hook, so I'm going to just kind of take that loose first wrap, and then I'll take my other wraps, kind of moving backwards, securing this in place. And then I'm just going to take this back to, again, back where I want the abdomen on this fly to start. It's going to be right about there. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to move forward, keeping this on top of the hook. So I do want to kind of grasp it a little bit with my fingers just to make sure that I keep that Z yarn on the top. And that's looking just fine. So now that we've gotten that far, the shuck is obviously too long, so we're going to cut that off. Probably about, you know, hook shank length, just about like that. And that's really going to make this pop. This is like I said, a merger pattern, so we want it to just sit in the surface of the film on the water. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stand this wing up, and how we're going to do that is we're going to just grab that Z yarn, as well as just about, you know, maybe somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of that deer hair, and I'm going to just take a solid wrap there. I'm going to grab my next little bunch of deer hair, pulling it back, take a couple of wraps here, and then we're going to take the balance of that back, and we're going to put kind of a jam wrap in here. So what we're doing is taking several thread wraps right here, right in front of that wing, and that should help it stand up for us, which is what we're looking for here. So we've got our wing standing up like we want it. I'm going to go ahead and take some wraps backwards. We're going to clean this up a little bit, and then we're going to work on our dubbing. So one of the things that you'll notice with this emerger pattern, the sparkle done, is because we put that foundation of thread in place before we tied our wing in, there's no deer hair on the bottom. It's not going around. We don't want it spinning on us at all, because this is not a spun kind of a pattern. We want no deer hair on the bottom there. So from here, now that we've cleaned up just a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and take some thread wraps backwards, trying to keep my fingers out of the way so you can actually see what I'm doing. So we're going to dub this, and I'm going to just turn to some superfine, and we're going to use the Blue Wing Olive, which is kind of a really nice dark olive color. Love using superfine again on this pattern because it dubs very tight. And that's kind of what I'm looking for here. So I've just got a little wisp of dubbing. One thing that I've noticed as I've watched my own videos, as I've been working on editing them, but watching others as well, is the camera lens tends to amplify. So what looks like a whole ton of dubbing maybe on a macro lens really is not very much dubbing at all. So just the smallest amount. And I'm going to bring this back here and take one wrap right here in front of the shuck, leaving a little bit of space because I'm going to want to take another wrap behind that to kind of set that shuck in place. And then we're just going to work our way up the body here. And I'll just tighten my dubbing as I go along here, just what we're doing right now. And I can already tell I'm going to need to put just a little bit more on here to finish this off properly. So I'll just come back to my box. So we'll just finger dub on some more of the exact same dubbing. Notice I still have some left over from the last one, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm just going to dub that on nice and tight and slide it right up against the other dubbing that we had there. I'm going to take some turns right behind that wing. Then I'm going to pull that wing backwards, and we're going to want to take a few wraps of this in front of that wing. And one thing that you'll notice here is we're going to want to do a couple of figure eights. And the reason we're going to want to do a couple of figure eights are the sides on this particular pattern. If I can find my bodkin so I can point it out. These sides right here where that wing is tied in, they don't have any dubbing. So the deer hair, thread wraps, whatever, is going to show through. So what we're going to do is these figure eight wraps where we're going to pay attention and tighten our dubbing down just a hair. So when I say figure 8, what I mean is I'm going to take a wrap. I'm in front of the wing. I'm going to wrap around behind that wing with that wrap. Now I'm behind the wing. I'm going to take another wrap in front of that wing. And I may do that one more time here, where I'm going from in front of the wing to wrapping behind the wing, and then wrapping from behind the wing back up to the front of the wing. And what that does is now that dubbing is going to surround that nice deer hair for us. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit, and we'll be back and we'll finish this one off. So there we are. Great emerger pattern. And I really like the white, especially, I say this so many times in my videos, as I get a little bit older, it's harder to see these on the water, and these are going to float right in the surface. The white Z yarn will help you spot it when you throw it down on the water. So I'm just going to take, a couple of turns with my whip finish hair here. Go ahead and pull that nice and tight. Kind of turn my vise at an angle so that I can go ahead and cut this thread off. Okay, so there we go. Here's our sparkle done. Great emerger pattern. I've got this in a size 16. I've already got some hooks laid down for me because I do want to use this out on the river. Actually got some probably 18s, and I'll probably maybe go down to a 20. So give it a shot. Great pattern.